Oh man, I'm excited for Kourend. This thing is like genuinely so stacked. God, I'm even so excited I forgot to say, welcome. Let's jump into it. Now, it probably comes as no surprise to you that the one region of the game where they based an entire league around is gonna be good. All right, I know. Hear me out. Here's all of the shops that I think are pretty notable in the area. You're gonna get access to the Arceuus Ruin shop, pretty good. You get yourself some Blood Ruins, some Soul Ruins, got access to all of that. You're gonna get fishing shops in Port Piscarius. You're gonna get mining shops over in Lovakench, so you can pick yourself up a Ruin pickaxe pretty early. Woodcutting Guild, if you want to get a Ruin axe without going through and doing something like the nature spirit, the tree spirit. The Porthos dungeon actually sports a hide tanner as well. That can give you a little bit earlier access to dragon hide armor. You've got some farming shops. There's actually quite a few of them, but since the farming guild is here, I figured that's the one I would call out. So farming shops in the farming guild, go figure. And even right here, I mean, you know what's coming. This is at least 2 guilds in this region. Isn't that something? And then of course, you've also got a gem stall. Sells up to cut rubies over in the Kourend castle. Now, skilling options, look at all the stuff here, man. There's so much going on. You get Winter Todd for fire making, and I mean, you do also train a little bit of fletching, a little bit of woodcutting while you're in there. Plus, with Winter Todd, you get access to the Tome of Fire, as well as a Dragon Axe. The Dragon Axe is pretty rare, but the rate is going to be boosted in League, so you actually have a somewhat reasonable chance of getting this. Plus, all of the Winter Todd rework stuff is going to be available during the league. So when we're talking about like the warmth meter, being able to use potions for food, it's gonna be really nice, I think, to be able to go through and do Winter Todd. Not that it was super terrible before by any means, but it's just that much better. Now, on the woodcutting side, you are getting access to the Woodcutting Guild. So not only are you getting access to all of these high-level trees, including redwood trees, but this is also gonna be a really good place to woodcut if you're not looking for forestry events, just because you get that invisible level boost while you're in there. Plus, redwood trees, very good AFK once you get up into those higher levels. And you can use these logs for fletching. Granted, I don't think it's the best fletching XP, but I mean, if you're already AFK there, that can be a good use of those. Also, along the lines of guilds, you know, going over to farming, you get the Farming Guild, which has all kinds of patches. You get like the full breadth of patches over in the Hosidius house, you know, the allotment, the herb, the flower, that type of deal. You're getting grape farming, which maybe sounds a little bit weird, but when you're looking for Wines of Zamorak for something like training your herb lore, making turning your dwarf weeds into a bunch of ranging potions, it's actually kind of a pain in the butt on an Iron Man to get those. So having the grape farm, actually quite good. You've also got the Tithe Farm minigame, which if you don't want to like sit around waiting for things to grow, you just go and do that. It's also going to be really good farming XP. So, I mean, even just like from this top row, Kourend is essentially the best skilling pick you could go for, and there's still more to come. You know, like there's a lot here. All right, I'll stop glazing Kourend for a second and continue on. If you want access to an altar, there is one in the Porthos dungeon. Not necessarily the best way of training prayer, but if you're gonna be down there anyway, doing something like killing red dragons for like grubby keys, for example, which we'll talk about here shortly, then this is kind of a nice way to get some extra prayer XP out of that. It does take using, I want to say it's 50 or 100 dragon bones on this altar before it's actually going to be active for you, so do bear that in mind. You are also going to be picking up Konar, the Slayer Master, and while the Slayer Masters are all generally treated the same, one of the nice benefits of Konar is the Brimstone keys that she can give you. So that's going to be even more supplies, as well as a chance at the Dusk Mystic set. Not that that'll necessarily be good for you, but there's probably going to be some tasks associated to it. So you are going to be opening up this chest anyway, and in general, you're going to be doing Slayer regardless, because there's going to be tasks associated to that, associated to getting superior monsters, things like that. So it is definitely a really strong boost, I would say, to Slayer. You do have some mining, some smithing options. I've got the blast mine shown up here. There are places for you to mine ores as well. Not a lot of high-level ore littered around the continent, so it's not like you're picking up a crazy amount of Runite rocks or anything, for example, but it is just kind of a nice change of pace sometimes if you do want to end up doing doing that activity. Fishing and cooking, you've got anglerfish, so really good, really high healing food for you there. Very AFK as well, so that's a good AFK opportunity for you, especially if you don't want to worry about doing something like Kourend ones. Plus, you've also got the aerial fishing, which is going to give you a little bit of hunter XP as well. Historically, there have been tasks for things like the golden tench, so you're probably going to be out there doing that anyway. Rune crafting, you're getting a couple of options. You've got blood and soul runes that you can do using the dark essence blocks. This one gives a little bit of crafting XP as well, though I wouldn't necessarily take this as, say, like a crafting training method, but every little bit is going to add up just that much more in leagues. Plus, early on, you've got access to the Arceuus library, and while favor has been removed from Kourend, meaning you don't have to do this activity in order to like get access to other pieces of Arceuus like the spellbook, you can still go into the library and turn books in to get XP, and it is very good early rune crafting as well as magic XP. So if you do end up taking this region first, which I think this is one of the strongest early region picks just for all of the things that are here, this is going to be a really solid boost not only to rune crafting but also to magic as well, because this is going to be faster than you casting any sort of low level spells on an NPC. You've also got another thieving option over in the Piscarilius house, running and stealing the whatever chests from the area, and while I wouldn't necessarily say this is like the best XP, there are normally some tasks associated to it and it is decent. You can do it at somewhat lower levels as well, so just another activity is sort of like a change of pace, give you another option. Now for the mobs and activities, still a pretty good amount going on over here. You've got some good options for just kind of like AFK training. So you've got sand crabs, everybody's pretty familiar with those on a couple of the beaches over on like the sand crab island and whatever. You've also got the red spiders that are in the Forthos dungeon. So if you wanted to AFK and train yourself up, you can get yourself some grubby keys along with that. On the topic of grubby keys, there is the grubby chest. Really, really good for supplies. You can get food there, you can get a whole bunch of different potions. It also has some like dragon ammo, some different rune drops as well. So a lot of time. So I expect, especially in the early and mid game, this is going to be a really good place to spend a lot of your time. Doing something like AFKing the red spiders and then just building up that stack of grubby keys and using that to open the chest, get yourself some early supplies, some early potions to kind of boost your stats up, anything like that. Of course, one of the largest features of Kourend is the catacombs. So that's going to be just a lot of various Slayer creatures that you're getting access to. Some ones that I listed out here, they don't necessarily have like really good drops, but they do give you access to superior Slayer creatures, which is important. So you're going to have things like Dust Devils, the Banshees, Bloodvelds, anything like that. And there's just a ton of them down there. And of course, they are going to drop the whatever purple crystals, as well as the totems that are going to let you fight Skiiiiilling, but we'll talk about him in a little bit. While we're down in the catacombs, there are also brutal dragons of different types, as well as iron steel dragons, so you're getting access to a lot of stuff. Brutal blacks I put on here just because they typically are both a fairly decent like ranged AFK method, but they do give you a very good chance at getting something like a dragon spear, dragon plate legs. So if you're looking for those drops to maybe complete some tasks, these are a good thing to kill for those. Moving along, you do have the whatever crime bosses that you can hunt. And again, while favor has been removed from Kourend, it might actually still be worth your time doing some of those activities. So like with the mob bosses, you can get tomes that give you pretty good XP. They have a chance of dropping a rune scimitar, so if you pick up this area early and you find them, that can be a good way to upgrade your melee weapon. They also drop a lot of other supplies, a lot of plank drops, things like that. So these are ones where they are time gated. So if you can't, if there isn't organized crime, whatever being reported, at that moment, go and do something else. But it is something that's worth checking in on because the XP tomes that they give with this that go into combat skills, it is a pretty good amount of XP and their drop table is quite decent. So especially early on, I think these are going to be pretty powerful if you can find them. You are also getting access to the Shazian armor, which not the best early game armor per se, but it is going to be useful for killing things like Lizardman Shaman, which drop the Dragon Warhammer. And it can also help to fill out some slots that you don't have, especially things like boots and gloves, which are kind of hard to come by early on. They do actually have at least some stats with them, so that can be a good early pickup to kind of help fill out your gear if you're missing anything. You're also getting access to Watson. So while you can technically get master clues elsewhere, this is probably the easier way to get them, turning in one of each tier of the clues. So that's kind of a nice benefit of picking up Kourend if you're someone who likes to grind for clues, especially because typically in leagues, the clues end up being stackable. So it's very easy for you to just build up a huge stack of each type of clue, run over to Watson and just like go turn them all in, get a clue, turn them all in, get another master clue, turn them all in, just kind of like keep going through that process and end up really stacking up a lot of master clues. You are also going to get the Brimstone Slayer dungeon, which is going to give you access to things like the drakes, the hydras, and you can see some of the various drops that are on here. I wouldn't necessarily say that all of these drops are going to be super critical, but they are kind of like nice to haves. You know, there may be some points associated to them. If you're going to be doing a lot of fishing with the harpoon, having a dragon harpoon definitely doesn't hurt. Of course, you also get the hybrid ring from the hydras, not necessarily best in slot, but considering it's a little bit difficult to get a good ring in leagues, if you're in Kourend, this is definitely going to be a solid option for you. And then last but not least, you do get access to the Arceuus Spellbook. So let's take a look at some of those spells just so you can kind of see why this spellbook is so good. So we got all the different Arceuus spells here. In terms of like a combat spell, you've got access to the different Demon Bane related spells. They've got a couple of them scaling depending on your level. I think a lot of people are familiar with this specifically for killing tormented demons, but any sort of like demon monster, these are going to be really good to use on. And especially because it's sometimes a little challenging to figure out what your magic route is going to look like, this may actually be the best spell for you to use in a lot of those situations. Thralls is another big one. You're able to summon a little dude, help you do some damage, and if they end up doing something that boosts the thrall damage, then this is just going to be that much better. They did something similar in the last league. They've done something like this in Deadman mode as well, where they like quintuple it or whatever, right? Like they'll give it some additional multiplier because normally their max is like a 3. And so if they can get that up there, a thrall can hit up to like 15, 20. It starts to become extremely powerful. On the utility side, you have something like Dark Lure, which can help in just picking up some of those rare implings, especially if you do a lot of Puro in the starting area. There's going to be a limited number of worlds, so it's kind of a pain in the butt to track down high level implings like dragon implings. So if you have access to Dark Lure, you might be able to snipe that impling away from somebody. Sucks for that person, but hey, you know, you took Kourend. You are also getting access to the reanimation spells. That's an entire way to train prayer. Likely you've seen as you go through the game, you're killing creatures, they drop ensoiled heads. This is how you use them. And they are actually very good prayer XP. So having access to this as a way to train your prayer is probably going to be better than the Porthos dungeon altar, but it's going to take you a little while to build up all of those ensoiled heads. If I was going to speculate, you'll build them up mostly from doing things like Slayer, but you can also go out of your way to farm for them if you really wanted to. Now, while there is a lot of spells on here, the last one that I wanted to call out is Death Charge. This helps you get back your special energy whenever you're getting a killing blow on a creature. So this is one of those things where it's just kind of fun to use, and especially if they end up doing something that will boost special attacks in some way, then this can become really powerful and synergize really well with those types of relics or masteries or whatever that ends up looking like. But I think that is enough of the spells. Let's move on to the bosses. Oh my god, it's the final boss. It's the YouTube algorithm. Quick, you've got to hit subscribe. Oh my god, you gotta save me. No, oh my god. It's a 2 over the top. I don't know, man. I don't know. Bosses, we're here for it. Oh goodness. There is actually a decent number of bosses in Kourend. Of course, you've got something like Seracnus that's a little bit more of like an early game boss. Doesn't have a lot of crazy drops, but you do get the Seracnus Cudgel, which is equivalent to a Dragon Scimitar, but it's a crush option. You've got Skatizo. Again, nothing like crazy that he's dropping. He is a good clue dropper. He does have a chance at dropping some onyxes if you didn't want to go through like the Tazar shop, anything like that. You've got the Mimic here, which again, you know, it's a clue boss. Can drop you that third age ring, not necessarily useful, but probably has a task associated to it. The farming guild, you get Hispori, so you're going to get access to the bottomless compost bucket, the different Atlas seeds that can kind of boost your farming just in general. You're also getting access to Hydra, you know, big Slayer boss. Has a lot of drops, most of them that you can't use with just Kourend, which is a little unfortunate. We'll talk about those a little bit more in the gear section, but this is another way to get yourself that ring, which while it's not going to be best best in slot by any means. It is a good ring. And again, I think it's pretty difficult to pick up a good ring throughout the league because a lot of those tend to be locked behind Fremnik and not everybody wants to take that region. And of course, you have got the Chambers of Xeric, a big bad raid in the region. And of course, the raids are all going to drop the big 3 weapons. So not only do you have access to the Twisted Bow through here like you normally would, but you're also going to have access to the Scythe as well as the Tunic and Shadow. And I think this in particular really helps to strengthen this raid because, of course, one of the drops that you get from this raid is Ancestral Robes. So that is the best in slot mage robe. So being able to get this as well as the Tunic and Shadow together, I think is actually a pretty big deal. But besides that, you also have access to kind of all of these different items. So the Dragon Hunter crossbow, along with a really good range shield. You've got the door for anyone who wants to do crazy door builds. You're going to have to come to Kourend for that one, do some Chambers of Xeric. Dragon Claws is a good spec weapon. The Elder Maul has been changed, so it's also a good spec weapon, kind of like a better version of the Dragon Warhammer. And you are going to get access to the 2 different prayers, so Augury and Rigor, to really help boost your damage up with range and mage respectively. Now, in terms of the Echo boss, I've got it marked as Skiiiiilling here, though I'm debating between this and Sarachnis really. And I guess the challenge with it being Skiiiiilling is you have to farm totems, and I don't know that they're going to want to make the Echo boss something that you have to go out of your way to like farm a key for in order to access. That's kind of making me think, I bet it's going to be Sarachnis. All right, I'm convincing myself. I've moved the question mark. I think it's going to be Sarachnis just because as good as the cudgel can be for you like fairly early on, I don't think it's a critical drop. I don't think this is going to stop them from wanting to turn this into like a really powerful Echo something boss, right? And I have a hard time believing that they'll want you to have to farm keys in order to fight the Echo boss. It seems like a little bit tedious, I think, for leagues. So I'm going to go with Sarachnis. In terms of what it might drop, I think it would be cool if they leaned into the mage aspect of this, since you're already getting best in slot robes, and they give you like a best in slot equivalent necklace or something like that, that's going to boost up your mage damage. That's what I'd like to see, but I am curious, what are your guys' thoughts in terms of what you think an empowered Sarachnis might drop? Or do you think it's a different boss? But enough about bosses, let's talk about the gear. And starting up, we have got melee. So again, you've got that Shazian armor that can help you kind of like fill certain slots early on. I don't think you'll necessarily need the full armor set because you'll have access to things like Ruin, which is going to be better than like these core pieces. But it is going to help you pick up a Dragon Warhammer, which is probably going to be like your early special weapon before you really spend a lot of time in Chambers of Xeric. Depending on whether or not Sarachnis ends up being an Echo boss, you may also try to pick up a Sarachnis cudgel. So not necessarily the strongest region for melee, but there are some things that you can do here early. And then once you get your Slayer up, you get yourself into the Chambers of Xeric, you're starting to pick up some more weapon options for you to kind of play around with. Got the Scythe, of course, being that mega rare, the Elder Maul, which is just going to be essentially a direct upgrade to the Dragon Warhammer. So I think this one, it's a good weapon now. It's actually something that's usable. Of course, you also have Dragon Claws if you really want to get that DPS out. If they do something like boosting special attacks, these are going to be really good. Door build for those crazy people who want to go like Zeah, Mauritania to get the Justiciar and do something wild with that. There's always a couple of people who like to do that in leagues, and it does look really fun. You are also going to pick up the Brimstone boots, not the worst boots that you could use. I think you also have access to Ruin boots if you really don't want to use these through the Necreals in the tunnel. Plus that ring that I keep going on about, kind of a pain in the butt to get rings, man. I'm telling you right now. It's a good thing to pick up, all right? Now, in terms of what this stuff can combine into, you have got the Hydra leather, which make the ferocious gloves, but you do need the Fremnik region in order to access the Lithgren Bolt, which is where you actually make the gloves. So you would have to take Fremnik in order to get these. I don't think with just those 2 regions, Kourend and Fremnik, I don't think that's necessarily a very good combination by itself. But if you pair that with another region, maybe like a Mortania or an Asgarnia, it might start looking worthwhile. But I do think that there are probably some better combos out there than doing something like that. You're also getting access to it's like the Hydra tail or something like that to make the Bone Crusher necklace. You'd have to pick all 3 of these. So you're already picking up Kourend, Mortania, Fremnik just to get this. Definitely not worth it unless you already want to pick up those 3 areas. Of course, with the Catacombs, you do get the whatever purple crystals that you can turn into the Arclight. You will need the desert in order to get the Dark Light to turn it into the Arclight. So that's something to consider. It is a really good weapon. And then depending on what they do with Tormented Demons for the Ember Light, you're likely going to need Kourend in order to kind of like complete that pathway there. So again, with this, and kind of the same with all of this stuff, I don't know that that any of these are a good enough reason for you to just pick up that combination of regions. You would need to have something else, I think, in order to make that worthwhile. The last thing I wanted to shout out here is the Dragon Hunter Lance, and this is another one of those that's it's pretty difficult to build out during the league. You get the piece that you need from the Hydra in order to make this thing. You also need Asgarnia in order to get the Zamorak Spear, and you need Kandrin for Barbarian training in order to turn the spear into a Hosta, and then you can combine all of that together. So kind of rough to make this item, but is what it is. And of course, just as a reminder, you know, you've got Thralls, you've got Death Charge for any of your special attacks, so you're gonna see these things kind of popping up in the corner here on all the gear. Now, on the range side, since you're getting access to a Hide Tanner, you may be able to pick up some Black D'hide a little bit earlier than you otherwise would have. Also, the Shazian armor, it is pretty decent range armor, actually, so you may be able to just pick this up as your set and be good to go. I think it's designed this way just because a lot of people end up ranging the Lizardmen Shaman, so like, honestly, I mean, this isn't the best melee setup, but it is pretty good range, I'm telling you right now. Like, I wouldn't knock it. It's not an endgame set by any means, but early on, kind of a pain in the butt to get D'hide anyway. Just pick this up, it'd be easier for you. And then again, as you get your Slayer up, you get into the Chamber of Xeric, you're picking up the Twisted Bow, best in slot bow. You're also getting the Dragon Hunter crossbow, which is going to be really good for Chamber of Xeric, but also any other dragons that you might be fighting in the area. Then you've got the Twisted Buckler, really strong range shield. This one the best in slot? It might actually be best in slot range shield here. You get a couple of spec weapons. These aren't anything like crazy, I would say, not necessarily good PVM wise, but if you're lacking a range special weapon, this at least gives you something. And of course, you're also going to be getting the Rigor Prayer, which it is a pretty big deal to pick it up here. So range, again, you're maybe not getting like a full setup, but you're getting access to a lot of good things here. And then we move on to Mage, and Mage, I think, is going to be the strongest combat style for this region. Early on, you're probably going to pick up something like a Tomb of Fire from Wintertodt as you go through, get 99 fire making. You do have access to the Salad Robes if you want them. They're not necessarily good, but you know, you're going to be killing some Lizardmen anyway, probably to get yourself some around the continent. So like, you may get the opportunity to make these. It is going to be a little bit better if Kourend is like your first region, just because you don't have a good mage setup in the starter areas. So this can help fill that gap. Now, since you do have access to a lot of Slayer creatures, you're probably going to be able to pick up an Imbued Heart relatively easily. And then you're also going into the chamber and you're getting best in slot core mage gear right here. Tumikin Shadow that you can use. It's two-handed, so you don't even need a shield for that. You're picking up Augury, which does actually give you a little bit of magic percent now since the rework. And of course, the ring, not necessarily anything to write home about with the ring or the boots, but they are there to help kind of fill some of those slots. Plus, you're getting access to the Demon Bane spell, which might have some good use cases for you depending on the different areas that you pick up. The only thing that you're worried about combining is going to be the wand piece. And unfortunately, you have to combine that with the Master Wand in the desert. So if you wanted to use this, I don't know if I love Kourend Desert as a combo, just because the whole dual raid thing feels like a little bit of a waste. But if you end up taking that combo for a different reason, this is just kind of a nice bonus pickup. I don't think it's super necessary to get this wand. You've already got that option of the Tumikin Shadow, which is going to be better anyway, except for, you know, if you're in the desert, maybe for Ancients or something like that. But regardless, on the task side, last year we got 21 easy, 31 medium, 42 hard, 27 elite, and 3 master. As you can see, this is a lot of tasks. Actually, this may have been one of the highest, if not the highest point region last year. Let me just double check. Okay, yeah, so all of the raid regions were at the top in terms of points, so this was one of them. Now, Kourend, I think it has enough going on early. It is a really strong early pickup. And of course, when I'm talking the big tasks, these are all of the like end game tasks that you're gonna be spending a lot of time on, but don't let this dissuade you. I think Kourend is a really strong early pick, like first, second region, and then you can circle back later and do things like Chambers of Xeric or farming Skatizo or anything like that. So in terms of the big tasks, you do have the Chambers of Xeric, Wintertodt, Hydra, Sarachnis. All of those are going to have kill count tasks. They're going to have combat achievement tasks. Plus you're going to have things like chop, throw, fletch for the redwood logs, cooking and fishing, anglerfish, the golden tench, tithe farm, like getting certain numbers of seeds or point turn-ins or anything like that. You're going to have rare equipment tasks. So these are going to be things like all of the rage drops, so Twisted Bow, Ancestral, the Din's Bulwark, the Maul. You're also going to get the different skilling outfits, so like equipping the full Pyromancer outfit, the full farming outfit. So there is quite a variety in terms of the tasks that you're going to get. It's going to be a mix of skilling and PVM for Kourend because there's just that much stuff to do. And I know I've mentioned this a couple of times, but favor was removed, so you don't have to go through and worry about that. They are also going to be auto-completing a Kingdom Divided, so you're not having to go through and do a lot of quests if you pick Kourend. You're just gonna, like, you just pick it, you've got access to everything, you've got access to all of the upgraded spellbook. So like this region, not only is it good later, like because of these changes, it's good at all stages of the game. You could just take this region anytime you want, assuming that the gear lines up for the build that you're wanting to do. But that is all I've got for you. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more Leagues content. I've got quite a few videos planned, and I am going to be covering all of the leaks that they do in the coming like week or two once they start doing that. Got my Discord linked in the description down below if you want to join, and I am going to be streaming the League at the start. It's going to start on November 27th. We don't quite know the start time yet, but I'm going to be starting my stream at 9 a.m. Central, probably just talking League strats, different combos, things like that. And then whenever the game mode starts, we'll just switch on over to it. So with that, thanks for watching, and I will catch you in the next one.